Hello everyone. Welcome to the TechGig webinar on Spotlight on female software engineers in a post-pandemic world. Thank you for joining the session. I'm Sukriti Yadavanshi, your host for the session. Technology is evolving with time, but women software engineers who have an interest in the field may be intimidated at the thought of being in the minority. Many in the software industry believe that women's success largely comes down to role models and relationships. So how do women software engineers activate, accelerate, and elevate their career paths? What does it take to become a successful female developer or a software engineer in today's market? To guide you through all these questions, I am delighted to introduce you to our guest speaker, Saleha Williams, Global Head Strategy Enterprise Engineering at Cognizant for today's session. As a senior female executive in one of the world's leading digital transformation companies, Saleha will highlight what it takes for females to be successful in the software engineering world and provide tips, advice, and guidance for activating, accelerating, and elevating your software career as a female in tech. Saleha has over 3 decades of global technology experience with companies including Cognizant, Google, BBC, and Siemens. Fascinated by humans, technology, and business, Saleha has an MBA specializing in digital transformation, and she also has an MSc in positive psychology specializing in neuroscience and a disruptive innovation certificate from Harvard. As a senior executive at Cognizant, she leads the Global Strategy Office of Cognizant's Enterprise Engineering Division. Saleha sees innovation, diversity, and inclusion as the secret sauce to successful individual, team, and business growth. Before we kickstart the session, audience, please note that the session is scheduled for 1 hour. We will have 40 to 45 minutes for the presentation and the remaining 15-20 minutes for the Q&A. So in case if you have any questions, please feel free to share them with us on the chat window of the GoToWebinar control panel. Without any further ado, I will hand over the session to our guest speaker. Over to you, Saleha.
Sukriti, thank you so much. What a fabulous introduction. And thank you to everybody who has taken the time to join us today. I'm delighted to be here. It's an absolute honor. And to know we have so many women and men is absolutely amazing. As Sukriti said, I've been in the technology industry for over 30 years. And in that time, I've lived and worked all over the world. In India, I love India. In the States, both East Coast, New York, and West Coast, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, all across Europe, as well as some parts of South America. So I've had a career where I've seen the experiences of engineers all over the world. And I lead strategy teams and executive teams that really look to drive our software engineering capabilities at Cognizant. And so really what I want to do today is to put the focus on females, particularly how to flourish as a female in software engineering. And as Sukriti mentioned, in addition to my technology background, I've also completed a master's degree in psychology and neuroscience. And the idea behind that is because I wanted to understand how our brains work. So what is it as human beings that motivates us, engages us, makes us fearless, makes us fearful, stresses us out, gets us really motivated and energetic? How is all of that related to what we're doing in our jobs, in our careers, particularly in the technology world? And so I've done that with a particular focus on women in technology, mainly because I think, as a lot of you will know, we have more women coming into the industry, but we're often seeing them leave sooner as well. So really, this talk today is about you and for you, and it's for software engineers, people who are leading female software engineers, as well as engineers themselves. So what I really want to focus on is what are the key things you can do if you are a female and you're trying to get into the industry, or you're trying to move up, get promoted, move into a new role. Maybe you're returning from a career break or time off, or maybe you're just coming into the industry as a career switcher. But also, if you are leading and managing female engineers, and it's so wonderful to see so many men join the call today as well, because we do know that it is a diverse and inclusive culture. Companies who really drive forward inclusivity across all genders, and in fact across all areas from education, different backgrounds, LGBTQ, age, etc., etc. It is those organizations that are the most successful and the most profitable. And there's evidence from that from McKinsey, driving diversity, delivering diversity. So whether you are coming into the industry, moving up in the industry as a female, or you're leading and managing female engineers, the next 45 minutes, we're going to talk about how do you enable female engineers, or if you are a female engineer, to flourish in your career. Now, before I get into that, I just want to cover off the COVID situation, because I think what's really interesting at the moment is I'm hearing from a lot of women and men that they're concerned their careers are being put on hold, and that's whether they're in a job already or they're trying to get into a job. And so there's a lot of fear that things are not moving forward from a career perspective as maybe you would have hoped it would or would expect it to be doing pre the pandemic. And of course, this is still happening at the moment, and our hearts go out to you in India particularly. But what I want to tell you is, quite frankly, the software engineering world needs your talent more than ever. As clients pivot to digital and need to accelerate their digital transformation journeys, who need to become really software-driven companies, they need your skills, your talents. So what's really important is that you understand the value of your skill sets, of your learnings, and if you're not in a job, use this time to really take advantage of all of the digital information, the webinars, the podcasts, the websites that are providing information that wasn't there a year or two ago, simply because we're not able to travel, we're not able to meet in person and have events. So there's a wealth of information. And if you are in a role and you're looking to be promoted or move up, then ensure your social profile, your personal brand is at its best. And by that, your LinkedIn updates, your profile of who you are, what you're looking for. If you are looking for a role, say so. If there's particular skill sets, particular industries, put it out there, because recruiters are looking for that. Cognizant is looking for that. But there is a huge amount of opportunity for software engineers right now. So I don't want you to lose heart if you've been trying and you've not been able to move forward yet, or if you feel because you're more isolated, because you're at home and you're not in the office, you're not able to continue those goals. You can. You just need to do it in a slightly different way. But I'll talk about that a bit more as we come forward. So really, as I said today, the focus of this talk is really around how do we enable female engineers to flourish? And that's whether you are a female engineer yourself or you are leading and managing female engineers. And as Jakriti says in her fabulous introduction, role models and mentors are really important. And I think, I don't want to labor on this point because I think it's something that's debated or in the media and it's out there. Having good role models, having a good mentor is absolutely key. And I would agree completely. I think if you're looking for a mentor, if you're not in a role yet, in a company yet, again, use LinkedIn. to really champion your profile, your brand, and network as much as possible. And if you are in an organization, I want you to think about champions. Now, there's a difference between role models and mentors and champions. A champion is somebody who's actually going to actively advocate on your behalf as a female engineer in your company. So you need to invest in building your own strong support system, which includes champions, people who will champion you for particular projects or particular initiatives that are happening in the organization. And if you're not in a role yet, look at how you can network with particular groups that will do that. So in terms of how you make that happen, I talked about LinkedIn, and I think for me, in my career, LinkedIn has been, once it was established, one of the most networked, networked, connected, insightful platforms from a career perspective. And I think a lot of younger associates don't realize just how powerful LinkedIn is. The number of recruiters, of people in senior positions in companies looking for various people for different levels, early starters, graduates, 10 years plus, and across the range of diversity is huge. It is a massive platform. And not only do you have that as something you can really drive forward, the more active you are, the more you're putting your role out there, your brand out there in terms of who you are. But what I also want you to consider is the free LinkedIn training. And again, you will see there's a whole range of training programs, from how to build your personal brand, how to look at leadership, how to build resilience, all the things that as women in general, in a career perspective, we talk about and have as challenges sometimes that don't come as easily sometimes to women as men. Not always, but sometimes. So there's a whole wealth of training that is available to you there. And in doing that, again, you're networking and connecting, and you're profiling yourself. Because every time you do that training, it's going to come up to say, hey, this lady, this man has completed X, Y, Z. And what that's doing is activating the algorithms around people that may want to look at your profile. And that will help you then connect with role models and mentors. Now, the other thing that I think is incredibly important is if you are looking to move into the industry or into a new company, is look for the women in engineering groups. And I say this because it tends to be a newer area. We have lots of women empowered groups, which is fantastic. But if you're particularly starting out in your career, looking at the women in engineering groups that exist, and there's a whole series of podcasts, social media, LinkedIn groups, as well as companies. As I mentioned earlier, because of the pandemic, a lot more organizations are actually putting content out to the general public that was previously kept inside the organization. So you have access to people who are speaking, who are talking. Join the talks, join the webinars, look at the trainings that they offer in terms of LinkedIn, and build your brand around that. And in doing that, you can find the mentors and role models, particularly, that you're really interested in to help you really accelerate your career. If you're in an organization, seek out the internal D&I champions. So this is the diversity and inclusion champions. And again, a lot of companies are realizing just how important it is to really accelerate female careers and elevate the skill sets of women, particularly because women don't tend to do it for themselves. It doesn't mean that they're not as good. It doesn't mean that they're in a place where they're not as ambitious. It's just different. The way women generally tend to promote themselves is very different. So if you can, within your organization, or some of the external groups you can find on LinkedIn, for example, seek out the D&I champions, the D&I groups, and again, that's your opportunity to find the role models, the mentors, and the champions, somebody who's actually going to advocate for you going forward. And don't wait for someone to do this for you. You have got to put yourself out there. I think quite often there is a misconception because, again, as women, and I know this across a number of cultures, not just in India but globally, we're not always as good at blowing our own trumpets. And I think if you really want to accelerate your career, particularly in an engineering environment where, generally speaking, women are the minority, you need to put yourself out there and seek the people that can help you, elevate you, and drive you forward. Not just wait for them to come and do it for you or for it to happen. So use this time, whether you're in a role, whether you're looking for a role, to network as much as you can and find the people that can really help drive your career forward. I think if you're leading women in engineering roles, if you're a manager or a leader, again, my advice would be, and we do this within Cognizant, is to reach out to them so that you're actually actively encouraging them to talk to you and to tell you, what they need, what they're looking for, what training do they need, what support do they need. And in doing that, again, you're creating that connection, that network, and that championship on behalf of your female engineers. And don't just see this as an assumption that they know what they need, or even if they do, that they know how to ask you for it. Women are notoriously bad at not putting forward their own needs forward because they're looking after everybody else, whether it's in the organization, at work, whether it's with children at home maybe, or caring for others. So if you are leading and managing women, I really want you to seek out, as a reverse engineer perspective, how to really engage and interact to find out what it is that's motivating and driving the female engineers in your team. In terms of some of the key initiatives that I think, again, if you are in an organization or if you're looking to choose an organization, you really want to be thinking about the global and the regional perspective of women in engineering. So challenges that women face in India in engineering may be slightly different, or maybe on a different scale, for example, to those in Europe. So at Cognizant we have a Women in Engineering global group. So we get everybody together and we share information, news, events, panels, books, key people externally that we bring in to talk and inspire and help based on experience and subject matter that particularly helps. But we also have regional chapters so that works particularly for our India Women in Engineering or our North American Women in Engineering. We also have the Global Women Empowered Group. And this is where, again, as a female engineer, you can relate and network to women generally in the organization, which are still a minority. And again, I would encourage you to do the same in your organization because there is a lot more emphasis and investment going into creating diverse and inclusive organizations. And the women empowered groups give you access to other women, senior women, women who can advocate for you, champion for you, women who are aware of other job opportunities and promotions. Don't silo yourself to thinking that it's only within your engineering environment that you need to be networking. It needs to be wider. And of course, focusing on that wider diversity and inclusion, look at companies and take advantage of your company and the training that it offers around things like unbiased training, unconscious bias training, looking at how do you accelerate your career as a female in the organization, leadership skills or communication skills. Think of this in the wider sense. And again, that is where you will find your mentors, role models, and your champions. And one of the key things we have at Cognizant is the Cognizant Returnship Program. And this is something we're particularly proud of, where we are actively saying to both men and women, but I'm talking particularly around women today, if you've had a career break for whatever reason, maybe you've had children, maybe you've been caring for somebody, maybe you went off and did something completely different, you know, look at the Cognizant Returnship Program, because that's where we offer 12 weeks of paid training, mentorship, connect you to role models, and enable you to network and learn, and then consider potentially full-time employment after that. So finding role models and mentors, use these tips within your organizations, particularly on LinkedIn, and really look at how you can find somebody that's going to champion you and put you forward for the kinds of projects and initiatives or the promotion, and have you top of mind, as well as coach you as a mentor would do. The second thing that I found particularly interesting about female engineers, and I love this about engineers in general, is engineers are problem solvers. You know, that is the mindset of an engineer, is to solve problems, whether that's through coding, whether that's through architecting and solutioning. You know, it is to actually take a problem and find a solution to that. And what's very interesting with women all over the world, apologies if you can hear my puppy, I have a 7-month puppy in the background who doesn't like the doorbells. I'm sorry if you can hear that. But women engineers generally are often just a little bit too reserved in terms of making a mistake or feeling that they're going to fail. And what I want to tell you is it doesn't matter whether I've been talking with or working with and leading female engineers in South America, in Europe, in Amsterdam, London, in India, on the west coast of America or the east coast of America. What I want to tell you is that you don't have to have all the answers right now. You're an engineer. Your job is to create those solutions, to look at those. So as women, sometimes we can be a little bit afraid to make those mistakes. And what I'm saying to you is, look at failing as a positive thing, because you learn faster. And this is how you iterate, this is how you move on. And for those of you who are very young in your career, your early career areas, this is the whole point of doing what you do. The world has accelerated at a ridiculous pace, particularly because of COVID. And the ability to be able to take software and drive that, build that, work on it, change it, add to it, that is an iterative process. You're not expected to know all the answers straight away. So if you're in an organization, think about taking a ticket that does intimidate you. Don't just stick to the usual areas that you may be involved in. Now, volunteer or look at a leadership team role where, again, you can step outside of your comfort zone and you can really bring to bear the additional talents that you have in addition to your technical skill sets. And again, I'm going to keep telling you this, but reach out and put yourself out there. Tell your manager that you want to be stretched. Tell your manager if there's a particular type of technology or programming or language that you want to work on or you want to be trained on. Say so. How do they know if you don't tell them? And when you've done that, share your stretch achievements. Now, this does two things. If you write down, and I do this myself, if you write down or type or put it on your iPhone or whatever you might do, if you create something for yourself that says, I did this, or this was good today. It is proven on a neurological level that that increases your confidence. And what's happening is that you're sending the neuro pathways between your knowledge and your memory and your ability to say, I did that. And your brain will connect and go, yeah, you did. Yeah, so okay, let's look at the next one. So first of all, by writing it down or by capturing it, whichever way you do, you're giving yourself and you're building that psychology armor, that neuroscience level of confidence to keep stretching and keep going forward. And the other thing is to share it with your manager, because again, if you don't tell them, they don't know. And this isn't a question of, trying to big yourself up. This is what you did, girl. This is what you achieved. This is what you did that was from here to here to here. And being able to articulate that, to capture it for yourself and to share that is really, really important. And it elevates your own confidence as well as your own ability to brand yourself as someone that is ready to take on a challenge and will look at new ideas. And that's the whole essence of software engineering, to drive forward new solutions and new thinking and creativity in the software environment. And again, what it does is helps you then to seek out new project sponsors. Hey, I did this, and maybe that's putting out something on LinkedIn, bearing in mind confidential information, so you may not want to put client details, etc. But the fact that you have achieved something or worked on something or been part of a team with some, put it out there and share it internally, externally, and in your brain psychologically. The third thing that I really want to come to is looking at how you own your strengths and your differentiators. And I think I said earlier, generally speaking, and this is the world over, generally speaking, women are not so good at what we call blowing your own trumpet or trying to big up what you've said, what you've done, what you've achieved. And I'm here to tell you that's got to change, because you can't have all of this amazing talent and not share it. It's your duty, it's your responsibility to be able to share what you do and how you've done things to drive forward for yourself, for your team, for your client, for your project, for your organization. And I think, so often we're so busy just getting on with the job. And this is a mindset most women have, not just in engineering, but again, all over the world, across all different industries. We're so busy getting the job done, as opposed to really owning our strengths and our differentiators and talking about what you've achieved and what you've done. And I think being able to build your brand as a software engineer, as a female software engineer. Again, what I want you to do is reflect on what your strengths are in the case of your wider talents. So by that I mean you will have your skill sets from a technical side, but in terms of things like problem solving, managing with difficult clients, setting up relationships, managing team relationships, bringing people together, communication skills, organization skills. All of these areas are needed to deliver outstanding client projects and programs in a software engineering environment. It's incredibly important, but it's not just about the tech. So think about, what are your strengths? Identify them and own them. And the other thing I would say to you is use them. Use them to overcome your fear or your nervousness around putting yourself out there. If you're really good, and many of us are, at being diplomatic and managing difficult clients and situations, or communicating in a way, bringing people together, use those, build on those, because that's how you can drive forward again your personal brand around you as a female engineer that is in addition to the fabulous investment that you've already made in terms of your technology skill sets. And the other thing I would say is also use them to overcome your frustrations, your anger, your anxiety. The world of work is a complex place. And, being a woman as a minority has its strengths as well as its challenges. But use your strengths, use your energy to really drive forward how you can move things and move the needle within a project or an environment or a situation that you find yourself in. And again, actively record and share what these are, what your strengths are. If you love talking with people, networking and connecting people, then say so. Let your boss know that. Let potential recruiters know that. If you're really good at minute detail and attention to detail that is needed, say that. Because in doing that, you're able to really articulate your strengths and differentiators in addition to your tech skill sets. And again, sharing that with your boss, with your team leader and your colleagues, highlight where your differentiation is. Companies do it in terms of this is how we differentiate from the competition. You, as a female engineer, you can do it too. So one of the things I say to a number of people in this area is consider what you want to be famous for. And I don't just mean being a female. Now, I've been in the industry a very long time, and I have used my strengths in terms of my presenting skills, communication skills, more laterally my neuroscience and understanding brain psychology and how that motivates us and drives us forward. And that's what I bring to the table in terms of being able to add to what is already very complex strategy projects and execution programs. But think about, what do you want to be famous for? What do you want to be known for? And I don't mean as a speaker, I mean within your team. That's the lady that does X, Y, Z, or this lady is particularly good at that. Or if we put this lady with this person, put them together as a team, wow, you've got real gold and real value. And owning your strengths, being able to articulate those, enables, again, you to feel good. It enables your boss and your clients to really see where you shine. And by putting it all together, you're creating the value for your own career, as well as the delivery of what it is that you're looking to do. So in terms of sort of coming up to a close, I think going back to, if you are looking to move into a company or moving up within a company, really consider the women in engineering chapters and groups that exist. Within Cognizant, we also have something called Propel. And this is something where we focus particularly on how we propel female associates across the board, both junior right through to executive. I've done it myself, and it's an amazing program. Think about the kind of companies that really focus on diversity and inclusion, because that's, again, where there's going to be that active thinking around how do we make you feel valued and part of the team in a way that is, we want your skill sets, we want your talents, we want the different way that you think, rather than what is a gender-based, a difference between a male and a female. This is, let's build this inclusive environment and actively help enable and really drive forward the strengths that the female engineers have within our organisation. Just to sort of give you some facts you may not know, from the Cognizant side, again, look at the companies who are particularly focused and have been recognised in terms of how they manage their talent, how they manage from graduates right through to executive level. And Cognizant, I'm delighted to say, has just recently been announced as one of the top companies in India in 2021 by LinkedIn to work for. We're also listed as one of the Forbes best employers worldwide, and also the Forbes 2021 best diversity employer. So again, there is that active focus on inclusion, with particular emphasis on how we really motivate, engage, retain, and really drive forward the careers of our female software engineers. What I really want to leave with you, I think, is probably a heartfelt message. It is proven within neuroscience, within psychology, that generally as human beings, finding meaning in something is healthier for you than avoiding discomfort. And so in this context, what I want to say is actually, you've already invested in you. You've already put your skill sets, your training, your learning experience, if you have it, energy into getting into graduate programs or college, etc. All of that, you've already done that. You know this is your passion. So this is your meaning. This is what you want to do. So don't let the fact that you are maybe in the minority be something that stops you from continuing that journey. The most happy, successful, healthy human beings are those who find meaning in their career, in their life, how they move forward, as opposed to trying to step away from the negative potential situations. So continue your passion, and focus on how you differentiate, how you build your brand, how you step out of your comfort zone, how you find practical people within your organization and training and programs to help you move forward. And I promise you, your brain will thank you for it, and you will feel more engaged, more motivated, more successful, happier. And the world of female software engineers will also thank you for it, because the more we can show women who are really thriving and really flourishing in their careers, the more we can bring in another diverse set of thinking and skills into the industry. So let me finish by saying we are hiring. There's a link on the screen, and Shakriti will be adding this to the chat as well. So we are delighted to be the presenting sponsors of Code Gladiators with TechGig. You can find a whole load of information around our returnship program, around our early careers, as well as our jobs generally, whether you are 5 years plus, 10 years plus experience. Go to the Cognizant page on Code Gladiators, and my LinkedIn is up there if I can be of any assistance in directing you to some of the areas in Cognizant. So thank you so much for your time, and Shakriti, back to you.
Fantastic, Saleha. Thank you so much. I must say that each piece of advice you shared will aid a better career for all the women software engineers. Let's jump to the Q&A section quickly because we have a lot of questions from the audience. So my first question to you today is, does Cognizant have a program for women software engineers, especially because we were talking about diversity and inclusion altogether? So if you could just help us understand that.
Absolutely. So yes is the answer. We are particularly focused on hiring more female software engineers. So if you go to the link that's on the screen now, you will see links to specific jobs that are available. And at the same time, there's information about our internship program and early careers. So by going into those, you will be picked up, particularly as females that are interested in joining Cognizant, and we would love to have you.
All right. So I think, audience, you can go ahead and ask about the program and ask more questions around it to Saleha. Saleha, we'll move to the next one. So the next one we have is from Vaishnavi, and she's asking, how do I get into the software engineering field as a fresher? Please suggest ways so that I can successfully get into the field and cope up with the career.
Okay, so if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I will make sure that you are connected directly to the people that run our campus and our early starts careers. So connect with me on LinkedIn. Please say in your message, it's regarding Code Gladiators, you're a graduate or looking to get into the early career starter, and I can forward you the right people and connect you into the right people to do that.
All right. So Vaishnavi, please connect with Saleha and to have a detailed information onto the entire thing. Saleha, the next one is from Pooja. The question is, what should be our specific subjects we need to master and how can we do that?
Okay, so are you asking from a technical skill set or from a wider skill set? Let me answer that for you in case, or give you both perspectives. I think there's a whole range of technical skills that we're hiring for, and being able to be really good at that and highlight that in terms of this is an area I'm particularly passionate about is the key to then motivating and driving your career forward. In terms of additional skill sets, it's again focusing not just on the tech side, but in addition to that, your team skills or your communication skills. So I would, rather than say, is there one tech skill that we're after? Obviously things around, skills around cloud, around being able to look at how to integrate that in the wider sense, that's part of bigger projects that ultimately you may be involved in. But there's a number of different skill sets on the technical coding level. So I'm not going to say it's just one because we have so many clients, so many projects. I would say to you, be very clear what your skill sets are, what you're most passionate about, and how you can leverage that strength on the tech side, as well as bringing to that the wider skill sets that help you drive a client project forward.
Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one is from Al. Okay. Saleha, the question is, I always find myself as a person who is a bit weak in problem solving and logical skills. Can you please suggest a way to improve it effectively? How to not get discouraged if you take more than a day to solve a problem which others might consider easy?
I love this question. Mostly because I too get so frustrated if I can't solve something, whatever it may be, quickly, whether that's in a day, in an hour, in 5 minutes. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go onto LinkedIn and look at problem-solving skills, okay, as the first step. There are free training programs which talk about how to get yourself into a mindset of being your most creative to be able to solve those problems. I think that the second thing to say is honestly, give yourself a break. And it goes back to the stepping outside of your comfort zone. I think you need to be able to accept sometimes, and it isn't about intellect necessarily or even experience necessarily. Sometimes our brains are working at a faster rate than they do other times. And that's not just if you're tired, it's, different times of the day, whether you've had enough water, whether you're hydrated, whether you have low blood sugar. So just take a step back and realize, okay, it may be taking you longer, but you're learning. And while you're always learning, that's a positive thing. So don't see it as competitive. See it as a learning process and realize that everybody goes through it. I don't care whether you've got 1 year's experience or 20 years experience, you will find you have days and times like that. And the more you do it, then the more practice you have, the more experience you have, obviously the more you can build on those skills. But give yourself a break and just try and think about putting yourself in the right mindset. So looking at problem solving skills or even a YouTube video or a TED Talk video would be a really good idea to talk about the mental mindset side to put you in the optimum position to drive forward, how to solve problems.
Thank you for that, Saleha. Let's go to the next one. The next one is from Jivika. How to manage few team members who are not ready to accept a women leader within the same team? Should we ignore or respond?
You definitely have to highlight and respond. I think so. I'm guessing that you are a female in a sales environment and maybe one of the only females. And I think this is why you need to definitely reach out to the people in your organization who are interested in dealing with this. And what I mean by that is whether there's, the HR side, and I don't mean as a formal complaint, I mean in terms of what kind of training programs does your company have to be able to manage things like unconscious bias. So connect with your HR people, or if you have them, diversity people, or other women, and say, how would you recommend, and see it, you're an engineer, see it as a problem to be solved, not something ignored. So you're looking at how do you change this? Because if you don't change it, it just continues, and then you're going to get fed up and leave, and that's not good for anybody. So talk to your HR teams and see if there is any training, any talks, anything that can help, because I'm pretty sure that this won't be the only place that this is happening, and they will have experience and hopefully resources that can help you deal with that.
Okay. There are so many questions, Saleha. It's very difficult to shortlist, all of them. Okay, so the next one that I can actually call out is from Pavitra. The question is, how to be self-motivated always, even in some difficult situations?
This is a brilliant question. Thank you. So I think it's a question of centering yourself. And we're in a world where everything is moving so quickly. We're so stressed out. We're so tired. I find it myself on a daily basis. One of the key things that I find is literally take 10 minutes and reset. Now, whether you use an app like Headspace or Insight Timer, I use Insight Timer, or a piece of music. There's a piece of music I have that is 3 minutes, 40 minutes long, and it just helps me breathe and think and go, okay. And the power of doing that helps reset on a neurological level to go, okay, now let's go again. And sometimes, some days you need to do that more often than others, but taking 10 minutes out and just, stop doing what you're doing is the best way to try and then remotivate and kickstart what it is you're trying to do in the first place.
Okay. The next one is from Anjali. The question is, what is the scope of a career in machine learning and AI in Cognizant?
Oh, great question. So I think that we have dedicated communities, tech communities within Cognizant that are dedicated to AI and machine learning. And we put those teams both together with wider tech-based, pod-based communities so that you're learning and working on lots of different projects. So there is both dedicated deep dive that you can get involved in, but then you're learning from people within that pod, within that community, skills, experience that you maybe wouldn't have done if you were only, just on the projects. So I think, the opportunities, and, we're so open to that in terms of machine learning, AI, data. I would say it's unlimited, because there is so many projects we have involving that, and we've restructured our teams so that they can learn from each other, and then they're able to elevate and move their career forwards.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Saleha, for that one. Okay, next one is very interesting from Renuka. The question is, what's better, learning new technologies or focusing on the previous one which we have already learned?
That's a really good question. So I think, again, it depends on where you want to go. If you are a person that wants to have an experience in learning across different types of technologies that you can bring together, then learn something new. If you particularly want to become a specialist in one area and really become a deep dive expert in that one area, then do that. So I think you have to decide for yourself, where is my passion? Where is the, ultimately, do I want to become the go-to person for this technology or this language, or do I want to have a more varied approach to that? And depending on where you think you want to go is the answer to whether you go deep dive or you go to the next one. Whatever you do, I would go back to saying stretch yourself. Always be learning and always stretching, whether it's another level within the current tech that you're learning and involved in, or if it's another tech area. Keep stretching, but it's up to you to decide if you go deep, 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 or you go broad, depending on your career aspiration. And there's room for both, absolutely.
Wonderfully described. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, Mahima is asking Saleha to move to a higher position, especially managerial. Apart from technical qualifications, what do employers look for and what skills should be focused on?
That's a great question, thank you. So I would say in terms of moving into leadership roles and managerial roles, you know, an MBA or something of that kind is always a really good idea, because you're starting to learn then how to work across the organization and leadership skills around teams, managing people, communication, as well as, you know, being able to talk financially, being able to talk operationally, etc. If you can't do an MBA, again, look at business skills or look at team and leadership skills. So again, my advice would be go back to LinkedIn and you will find leadership or business skills training and pick ones that are the most pertinent or you know, particular to you. But having that more rounded managerial business outlook, I think is really what can elevate you in terms of being able to lead teams, manage financials, projects, program management, etc.
Okay. The next one is from Shweta. The question is, if I want to transit from software developer with 7 years of experience to project management stream, what skills should I master and what's the process to follow?
Okay, so if you are in Cognizant, I don't know if you're already a Cognizant employee, but you can look at talking to HR, but also talking to your community leaders. We have a program management community team, community model, in the same way as we have the machine learning and the AI, etc. So I think in terms of, first of all, talking to the people who run that or who can bring you into that, and then having a conversation with them to say, what skills do I need particularly? What are you looking for right now? And do you have skill sets that would already enable you to move into that? Or is there new skill sets you need to look at? So I think talking to the people in the product management area would be your first stop. But being able to move across, and in Cognizant, we've started a program of rotation, where we're moving associates around on different projects, and so they get to see different technologies. So it's definitely something that we can look at, and I would go to the product management area and speak to those people and say, hey, what do you need? And what's the opportunity for me to get involved in now or in 3 months? Or what do I need to do in the meantime to make that happen?
Okay, the next one we have is from Vinuta. The question is, what are the skills we must have to join Cognizant as a specific organization?
Okay, so again, it depends on where you are in your career. We have a whole range of roles and positions open. So if you are looking at software engineering specifically, then obviously you will see there's various roles that we have, and there will be technical specifications that you need to meet to be able to go into those. So the best thing to do is to go to the website, look at the job descriptions, and they will say what are the tech requirements for each of those roles, and they differ. If you wanted to look more at product management, for example, or program management or design, again, those roles exist too. And those roles are not going to have the same specifications from the tech side. So what I will say to you is we are interested and we would love to hear from you, whether you are an early career starter, a graduate, or somebody with very little experience, right through to if you have specific skill sets. And the returnship program in particular will then help you look at what kind of areas you can go into and what additional training, networking and mentorship you might need to move that forward.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, Saleha, a lot of people are asking questions on the, being at the freshers end. So I'll take one of them. Neha is asking, what are the tips for freshers, software engineers to excel in their career?
For precious software engineers to excel? Is that the question?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so again, I think it comes down to knowing your strengths and being able to demonstrate what you have done, what you've achieved, and what value you've brought within that. If you want to go into more technical understanding of additional technical information and learning that is needed for precious software engineering, then we can come back to you on that and I can connect you to the people that would be able to help with that in more detail.
All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, it's very interesting. Sonu is asking Saleha that how can we manage learning continuously with the changing technologies?
So the first thing I'm going to advise you to do is to go to our Cognizant page on Gladiators and to watch the Global Software Engineering Career webinar by Sandeep Dev, who is our Global Head of Full Stack Engineering. And he in his webinar talks about how do you manage continuous learning given the rate of change in tech. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say, again, coming back to my what motivates you and drives you, is to be intentional about where you want your career to go and what drives and motivates you. So if there is a particular skill set on the tech side, how you grow within that and expand that, if that's where you want to be, then that's where you focus. And it goes back to where we talked about, do you go very deep or do you go broader? And I think looking at, if you're in an organization, again, talk to your managers and your team and your colleagues around what does the organization need? Because or what does a particular project need? Because if you want to accelerate very, very quickly, and there is huge demand for this type of learning and experience, then maybe you want to pivot to that and gain that wider experience. But I would also always come back to what drives and motivates you, because that's where you will excel. But go to Sandeep's webinar on the Gladiators page, and he will talk about that in a lot more detail from a technical viewpoint as well.
Okay, maybe this is the second last question. I'll have one more ask after this. Chaya is asking Saleha that does switching careers in technology work out well in the industry? What will I have to do to obtain a new title?
To obtain a new title. Okay, so I think, again, as we've talked about, the world is changing so quickly in terms of different technologies and the rate at which, one thing is becoming really important and another is becoming less important. So if you are switching, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are lagging behind in terms of your career. I think what you need to consider is, again, what is the demand for that skill set? And does that need to match the acceleration you want within your organization, within your project? So getting a new title is going to be based on, are you qualified in that new technology or that new language and being able to evidence that. That's the first step. But also being able to evidence and show your involvement in projects where you're using that is also then going to help move you up in terms of new titles or career promotion and rotation.
Okay, so this should be the last one for this session, Saleha. The question is this a myth that women are only meant for designing work in software engineering or logical thinking as well? This is a question by Abhigya.
Can you just repeat the question at the beginning again there, Shikrusi?
Sure. So the question is this a myth that women are only meant for designing work in software engineering or logical thinking as well?
Okay, I'm smiling because I hear this question or this argument so many times around, are women's brains different to men's brains in that women are less logical, mathematical, and use one side of their brain more than the other? So here's the answer. The answer is, it is up to you as a human being, whether you are male or female, to activate your brain and drive forward the areas you're most intentional about, passionate about. So if you want to be in a logical, mathematical, very sort of precise environment in terms of your career, learn that, build on that, keep activating yourself in that environment, and you will build that skill set. If you want to focus on wider creative design and wider problem solving in that wider sense, then again, focus on that. But what I would say to you is, so yes, it is a myth, because our brains are malleable. They are a muscle. And the brain isn't one muscle, as many people think. It's lots of different centers. And how you learn and how you achieve is based on how much attention, activation you put within specific areas of your brain. So if you are always focusing on logical, mathematical type scenarios, that's going to grow and build in the same way as if you kept doing arm bicep exercises, your biceps will build, but your legs won't. So I would say, yes, it's a myth. I would say focus on what you want to work on, what you want to achieve, and you have that neuroplasticity and ability to drive that in exactly the same way as the next person, whether they're male or female.
Wonderful. Here we come to an end of the session. Thank you so much, Saleha, for such a motivating session today. Thank you for sharing insights on how women software engineers can make a choice and flourish in their IT career. I'm sure all the pertinent tips that you detailed out are going to help our audience, especially women software engineers. It was an absolute pleasure to have you guide our audience today. I would also like to thank all our participants for making this webinar a great success. This session has been recorded and the recording will soon be available on techic.com. Thank you everyone for joining us. Saleha, would you like to add on something?
I would just like to say thank you for all the great questions. I hope that it's been of help. And if there is anything I can do, if I can connect you into various parts of Cognizant, then do connect with me on LinkedIn. But all of our positions and all of the areas we're excited about bringing you into, we are hiring, are all on the page, on the Cognizant page on Code Gladiators and TechGig. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Saleha. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please stay safe and take care.